without Bart Houston as a kind of, I don't want to say a distraction, but whenever you're battling snap to snap for your job and looking over your shoulder, it can hinder your progress as a freshman. So I think offensively, I don't see any issues at all. Defensively, again, they bring back so much at linebacker. I'm not sure if you saw, but Jack Sitchie, one of their star linebackers, is out for the year.
Yeah.
I don't think it's that big a deal, though, with T.J. Edwards and all the other depth they have there, Connolly. I think they'll be fine again. And the last part is, the last thing you look at is the schedule. I mean, they could easily win 11 games with that Michigan being the swing game, or maybe an at Nebraska could be tough, or hosting Northwestern. But honestly, at least 10 wins, probably 11, and they're going to be, just the way that the schedule sets up with Michigan being the second to last game, you're going to look at every week to week with those playoff polls coming out. They're probably going to be one of the few undefeated teams remaining, or at least one of the few one-loss teams. So you're always going to see that W up there in the top 10, top 5 on these release shows. So I think they're a clear West favorite and could make some noise nationally.
So I guess you could say that you could talk to your kids about possibly an undefeated Wisconsin, to put it in a different way from a few seasons ago, right?
It reminds me of Iowa, except that in this case, I think Wisconsin's legit, and Iowa was just, a house of straw there. So,
I agree with that.
Yeah, definitely. Mm-hmm. That could be the issue this year. Yeah, but no, it's a legit team. If you really want to nitpick it, it looks like they need to get back to winning first down. Reminds me that their style reminds me a lot of Stanford, where when Stanford wins first down and gets ahead of the chains and also gets ahead on the scoreboard, good night, it's over. So if they can get back to dominating first down like they used to, and then fill in some gaps there on defense, they always reload fine though. And I think they're the clear favorite here.
Yeah, they had one of the top defenses last year. I think it was 7th overall, which was pretty good. I mean, obviously. But when you look at the Michigan game last year and the final score was 14-7 at the Big House, now Michigan is going to be going over to Camp Randall. Everybody's going to be jumping around going nuts. Hornibrook, with that, season underneath his belt, he's a gunslinger. He just needs to clean up a little bit of the mistakes that he had. But I'm calling for Wisconsin to win that Michigan game based on the simple fact that I know we're going to talk about Michigan next week, but Harbaugh is 2-4 against teams that are above 500 away from the Big House. That's a problem. I mean, the 2 games that he's won is a 7-game Florida team and a 6 or 7 game winning Indiana team. So, I mean, he has problems against teams that are above 500 away from home. I think he makes too big of an issue or something about it. And with this young team that Michigan's going to have, especially that late in the season with the depth issue that they're going to have, I'm calling for Wisconsin to win that game and, like Chip said, possibly go undefeated.
And you wonder with Michigan there, looking ahead to obviously Ohio State, Harbaugh hasn't beaten them yet, and I know it's almost impossible to overlook Wisconsin and Camp Randall, but if there's ever a situation, they got the Buckeyes looming the next week. That could be detrimental. But one quick note on the Wisconsin defense, you had touched on it. Yeah, it was top 10 last year, but this wasn't just 1 or 2 guys, 1 or 2 star players getting that ranking. This was truly a next man up situation where there were injuries all over the place and young guys being thrown in. Mm-hmm. Only one guy started all 11 games. It was Chikwe Abasi at defensive end. Talk about 7 or 8 of those guys back. It could be dangerous on defense.
Definitely. I mean, it's the West is going to be interesting to shake out, and having Wisconsin as one of the top teams always up there, it's just, I mean, it's not their fault. Like people can sit there and say, well, Florida over there at the SEC East or whatever, it's just other teams got to step up. I mean, you look at the Big Ten East, and the other teams have stepped up with recruiting and everything like that. And it's no longer a 1 or 2 team conference. So, all right, before we go here, when you look at the Big Ten West, I mean, who are your, possibly just throwing it out there, like best offensive players, best defensive players that you think are going to have the best seasons? Chip?
Well, offensively, I think Alex Hornibrook definitely needs to be in the discussion at quarterback. I think, the fact that we've been talking about, he's definitely underrated on the national scale, and I think this is his year to kind of take a step up in national recognition. Justin Jackson at running back for Northwestern, I think he's definitely in the discussion. On defense, I'm going to kind of throw a little wrinkle at you guys, and I'm going to go with Iowa linebacker Josie Jewell. I think he's going to be kind of the heart and soul of that Iowa defense. So those would be some names that I would keep an eye and ear out for this coming season.
What about you, Brett?
So offensively, I think the most trusted product is probably Clayton Thorson at Northwestern. Like I mentioned, they're a pass first, at least pass more than the rest of the division kind of team. So I think he's going to have unreal numbers again and even improve on last year's stats. He's also a 100-carry a season guy, so he might get some touches and some rushing touchdowns too. I give him the quarterback spot. Running back, I was going to go Shannon Brooks out of Minnesota, but I'll be sharing a lot of carries over there with their duo. So I'm probably going to go with Justin Jackson again, probably another 1,000-yard year and a record-breaking year. Receiver, I like Stanley Moore out of Nebraska. They also have other weapons at wide receiver too, so I think it'll take some pressure off of him and open up some lanes. Tight end, I love Fumagalli, like I mentioned, from Wisconsin. He's going to tear it up again. And O-line-wise, I guess Iowa, again, with all starters returning from the nation's best O-line, or Wisconsin could challenge there. Defensively, when you look overall in the Big Ten, it looks like it's dominated mostly by Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State in terms of star players. Probably the linebacking core is strongest. I go either Iowa or Wisconsin. D-line, well, actually secondary, I go Nebraska, even with the loss of Chris Jones. And then D-line, I guess Iowa. It's kind of a toss-up there up front, Wisconsin and Iowa. But Wisconsin runs that three-man front, so it's hard to gauge. But that's who I get some awards to there.
Yeah, it's for me defensively. I think I'm going to be. I have a thing for the secondary and stuff. So, I mean, I'm looking at. I can't even pronounce his last name. Boot or whatever from Northwestern.
Northwestern, yeah.
Yeah, I'm terrible at pronouncing names sometimes. And, Chris Jones from Nebraska. Then you got Dixon from Wisconsin. So, I mean, those are some names to keep in the back of your mind that are going to be rattling some cages and making some noise, in my opinion. I mean, I don't know why, but for some reason, I'm a big, firm believer on Hornibrook. I mean, I watched that Michigan game last year, and I was kind of sold on him, and I don't understand why they went with Bart Houston, but, I mean, I didn't watch every game for Wisconsin, so I was a fan of his, and I really do think that, in all honesty, that after this season and the 2018 season, there's a very good chance that he could put himself, like Chip was saying, in a national conversation and become a first-round draft pick.
Yeah, absolutely. And give Minnesota some love up front. Steven Richardson, I think, could contend for all conference honors at D-line. He's probably one of the few stars there on their defense. But and also another guy from Nebraska, a little bit under the radar, Josh Kalu. He started on and off for probably 3 seasons now. And with Chris Jones going down to injury, I think he's going to move back from safety over to corner. The opposite Lamar Jackson, another up-and-coming star too. So Nebraska with some secondary strengths there.
And the West is definitely going to be interesting the way it all shakes out, and hopefully we're going to see the one matchup that I'm sure a lot of Wisconsin fans are looking forward to, maybe a rematch of the Ohio State-Wisconsin Big Ten championship game. But I don't think you'd see a 59-0 game if it were to happen this time.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for the Big Ten West, obviously to break the stereotype of being Wisconsin and everyone else is, I think Wisconsin will win it and they'll be top 10. But if the West can get a second or even a third team up into that top 15 or top 20 area and just be, making noise in November, I think that's huge. Obviously, the bottom of the division is reloading, and you can't even call it reloading, just going through change at the bottom and rebuilding from the surface up. But you can get a second team, whether it be Nebraska, Northwestern, or even in Iowa or a fleck Minnesota to just surge into November. I think that'd be huge for the whole stigma there. Hopefully roll that into signing day because the East has absolutely dominated February. think it's something like 18 to 20. The top recruits signed in 2017 were all East schools there. Most of them Ohio State and Michigan. So I think they got to start winning in November and then start winning in February too and close that gap.
Yeah, and there's a Penn State team that's starting to grab some top talent as far as the recruiting. So, like you said, it's the East right now for all the recruits, basically. Even
Maryland too. Maryland's killing the DMV area, Northern Virginia, Maryland, D.C., and Rutgers and Fertile Ground up north. So, yeah, the East has all the advantages recruiting right now and all the success for that matter.
Chip, did you have anything else?
Yeah, I just think, just to kind of summarize my thoughts on the Big Ten West, I feel, a strong consideration for Wisconsin winning the Big Ten West. Like you said, Shannon, at the onset of the podcast, I couldn't really recall who I picked last year. I probably picked Iowa, but I just honestly, legitimately cannot recall. But I think the rest of the division, with the exception of Purdue and Illinois, like you could make a legitimate argument for teams that are going to finish, 2 through 5. I think it's that bunched up, like in terms of, we already referenced the idea of Wisconsin losing, Jack Kitchie at linebacker. Hopefully no other teams suffer any kind of season-ending injuries like that. But, you can make the argument for Nebraska, Iowa, Northwestern. Any one of those teams, it would not be a shocker to me, any of those teams finishing second, third, fourth, whatever it might be. But I have a strong conviction that Wisconsin's going to win the Big Ten West. And as Brett said, I think, coaches like PJ Fleck, with his enthusiasm, maybe that'll help with the momentum on the recruiting side, when National Signing Day comes around in February of 2018.
Brett, did you have anything else?
No, I think we pretty much covered it. Looking forward to talking the East with you guys this time next week. At least we have 2 playoff contenders over there, maybe a third, considering how quickly Michigan can reload. I wouldn't call them a playoff bet for this year, but I think almost a lock to be a playoff contender next year. So a lot to talk about in the East, and looking forward to it again next week.
Yeah, I'm sure I'm going to make a lot of Michigan fans angry next week, but...
Michigan fans hate me. I'm used to it.
Oh, yeah. It's a conversation for next week, but Michigan fans are in a world of their own when it comes to actually understanding what's going on in a game of football. I just don't understand how you could sit there and tell me, that basically we're going to go ahead and beat Ohio State with ease, and we have to replace a quarter of our football team. Oh, and the 30 freshmen that we're going to hit on every one of them, when the national average, I think, if you're lucky, is maybe the highest is 34%. So you figure out of 30 players that they brought in on scholarship, 34% of those are going to be contributing by the time they graduate or leave early for the NFL. It's not very many players. And you're talking about having a whole team of sophomores and freshmen that are going to come up, and because you think Harbaugh's the greatest coach this side of whatever, it's not happening.
Yeah, I think to me just the annoying part is it seems they're not able to have a rational discussion.
That's
I can give them 10 compliments and 10 fact-based arguments that they're going to do well, but I give them one spot they're going to be, critique a little bit, and then they blow up Twitter. So they're not open to open rationale and open discussion. So that's why Ohio State just needs to keep taking care of business, and you guys keep controlling that side of the rivalry.
Well, speaking of talking to people on Twitter and everything, I know received a lot of DMs and people on Twitter when you tweeted out about us, doing our show. A lot of people, if you want, for the Ohio State fans that aren't familiar with you, if you want to go ahead and give me your Twitter handle.
Yeah, so it's at Pix Six Previews. That's all spelled out. We have a couple affiliate accounts too for conference-specific coverage, but it's mostly been from the main account, Pix Six Previews. We give you daily updates there. Highlight videos, old retro clips from the 70s, 80s, and even earlier than that. Once the season starts, we'll have our podcast going in full motion, and just coverage all Saturdays and throughout the week. So at Pix Six Previews for daily and hourly content, pretty much.
And your your podcast is the Triple Option Podcast, correct?
Yeah, so we'll have some preseason